To run this machine, make sure all dispensers have enough TNT, and then go over to the item filter and make sure that the barrels are full of items. These items will control everything about the machine. To start up the machine, I go all the way over to this piston area. When I hit this lever, the machine will start. And once the machine is done, I totally didn't switch worlds by the way, don't mind the change in color for the blocks. It blows itself up. But as long as it blows up its target, it should be fine. To create this setup, we need a chunk border with a dispenser facing into it. Once TNT is dispensed, it will have a specific initial velocity in a random horizontal direction, and a specific amount of velocity going up. For specifically the top piece of TNT, we need to get rid of all velocity with a slime block, before giving the TNT a new velocity. And then repeat that process a few more times, just without the slime block. Due to the random horizontal velocity, the bottom sets of TNT will start resembling a cylinder of TNT. Once the top TNT explodes, all the other TNT is launched into multiple different circles. Before I get into the explanation of this machine, you should probably have some realistic expectations with it. What are its limitations and what can it do? This machine is a highly customizable machine, so you can send different bombs out in different directions if you know how to program the machine to do it. So hypothetically, I could send hundreds of bombs out in all directions, destroying absolutely everything. Due to this machine being a prototype, many of those bombs just won't end up working, so that's one thing that you have to worry about. Also, after you use this machine, it likely will blow itself up. Why? I don't know. Realistic expectation number 2. It can only shoot TNT 1,000 blocks. This is simply due to a limitation in Bedrock Edition. I know I said last video it could fire out an infinite amount of blocks, but no, Bedrock Edition is sad. We can only send TNT out 1,000 blocks, unless if you use sand skipping. To all of you who ask, will this work on Java Edition? The answer is, in how many ways will this thing fail in Java Edition? Soft inversion and item filter. This repeater will power this piston. Pushing and pulling this dispenser will likely cause the TNT to do something unpredictable. Redstone running down glass blocks. Whatever kind of goofy TNT alignment system this thing is, this redstone is going to QC power this dispenser. This dispenser is going to get QC powered by this redstone. This dispenser is going to get QC powered by this redstone. This piston will likely spit out its block. This piston will likely spit out its blocks. This piston will likely spit out its blocks. This piston will likely spit out its blocks. Anything that uses pistons will break. If you dare ask me if this thing works on Java one more. And to anyone who is asking for a tutorial, this machine is just such a prototype and so rough that no, I'm not building a tutorial. You do not want to build this machine in your world. I will provide a world download. I don't know if it's going to work, and I'm going to provide a link to the calculator to do this. Just the calculator will not be super precise because I don't feel like spending a lot of time making it do good, because this is a rough design, and I know of a completely different way of doing this that will be better. Essentially, in this machine, there are a bunch of barrels and hoppers with a bunch of items. These items go into an item filter so that they activate certain parts of the machine at the right time. So essentially I got lazy and I hooked up everything to the central circuit with all the timings embedded in these barrels instead of making a bunch of separate clocks built into the machine. The first item to flow through the machine is the lime concrete. When the lime concrete flows through, it unpowers this torch, which allows this clock to run. And this clock repeatedly activates and deactivates this piston, which if we go all the way down here, there's a daylight sensor. So it repeatedly activates and deactivates this daylight sensor, which then continually powers this pulse extender, which allows this sticky piston to extend So that dispenser will be dispensing TNT on top of that glass block. When the TNT is dispensed into unloaded chunks, its starting velocity gets preserved. So when TNT gets ignited, it gets a random velocity in a direction. As you can see, the direction that the TNT goes in each time is different. But the total starting velocity is the same each time. So if you do enough trials, it'll create a circle. The next two commands are the purple and magenta. These two control the center flying machine, or in other words, the height of the TNT. When a purple item goes through, it activates the right side first, then left side, deactivates the right side, and then deactivates the left side, moving the entire flying machine up, which in turn moves the TNT up one block. This allows the TNT to be centered here, which means that all the TNT on the slabs will push this TNT out in a horizontal direction. Well, it also is going into the ground a little bit, but since we're going to be pushing that TNT up later, then that downward velocity will be removed. The magenta items work very similar to the purple items. The magenta ones start off on the left, move to right, deactivate left, deactivate right, moving the flying machine downwards. And now we move on to the cyan item, which the cyan item can also be the green item or a light blue item. All of these dispense TNT into unloaded chunks to be later put into the machine down below. Green items correspond to TNT ending up on that slab, cyan items correspond to TNT ending up on that slab, and light blue items correspond to TNT ending up on this slab. But the cyan, green, and light blue only dispense the TNT into the unloaded chunk. They actually don't do anything with the TNT once it's there. That's where the black item comes in. Once all the cyan, green, and light blue TNT are dispensed, then the black will take that TNT, align it properly, and send it down onto the slabs. And then after a significant time delay, it'll dispense water onto these slabs. I forgot to put signs here, but these signs are to keep the water from spilling out and destroying a bunch of valuable redstone. So you might be wondering, why are you only putting one cyan block through? Well, that is because once we repeat that entire process I explained earlier again, what we will get at the end is a bunch of sets of TNT all going in the same direction, but with different velocity. Once we have enough sets of TNT, or the number of cylindrical bombs, then we launch it in a different direction with a lot more power. This will launch the different bombs towards slightly different targets, so then the range of the explosion is a lot higher. Once this group of TNT has the right amount of velocity, we can move this slime block machine up to a certain elevation for the TNT to get released. Once the pink item gets sent through the machine, the player will get pushed into a new chunk, which then will load the TNT, no matter what elevation it is at, and it'll go off in a direction. Then we repeat that entire process another few times, but each time we release the TNT at a different Y level to produce the kind of projectile we want, which is one group of TNT right at the top, and then a kind of cylinder at the bottom of TNT. Things change once we get to that final TNT at the top that all needs to be at the exact same location. When a piece of orange concrete is sent through, it'll activate this piston, sending a signal down, just like what was done with the lime concrete. The first piece of orange concrete sent through the machine retracts that glass block out of the way to allow this entire flying machine to extend and push the TNT upwards, but with a slime block. And the slime block pushing the TNT upwards is what's important here. As demonstrated by this machine here, slime blocks cancel all velocity in any direction and then set the velocity in the direction it's pushing you to a certain amount. I don't know what that certain amount is, but it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that slime blocks reset all velocity to a specific amount. So in the case of this machine, the TNT in the center will have all velocity reset except for a certain amount of velocity going upwards, which means that the bottom pieces of TNT will scatter out into a circle as it travels towards its location, but the top TNT will stay in the center, allowing it to push all the other pieces of TNT out into a larger circle. After the slime block flying machine pushes the TNT up, and then it goes back down again, the TNT ends up at this location with only an upwards velocity. But this TNT has the same fuse timer as the other TNT earlier. If we were to launch this TNT outwards with the rest of the TNT, it would all blow up at the same time, since the fuse timers would be the same. So we need to somehow get this TNT to decrease its fuse timer without loading the chunk it's in. To decrease the fuse timer, another orange block will come through the machine. This will make the TNT end up not on that block, but in between these two blocks. Please don't ask me why the game does this. I don't know why when you push the glass block underneath it, it goes 1.5 blocks and not 1. All I know is that is what happens. And because this TNT is now in loaded chunks, then the laws of physics actually apply to them. So their upwards velocity now actually does something and launches the TNT upwards, even though the slime block that pushed them up is now a couple meters away from them. So the TNT flies upwards, and then it falls back down on the same location. Once the TNT is back down at the bottom, its fuse timer will have decreased by some amount. I don't know exactly what, because I don't care. Then yet again, one piece of orange concrete is sent through the machine, which activates the orange contraption again, pushing the glass block back. And just like earlier when I said when pushing the block underneath the TNT made it move 1.5 blocks, it moves exactly 1.5 blocks back to the center. If you're wondering why I do it like this and not with a regular piston pushing it back into the center, TNT is actually 98% the size of a block, which means if we use a regular piston, it's going to be offset by 2% of a block. And that means the TNT is going to go wonk. I'm sure you're wondering, why don't you just make the other TNT off-centered? Well then, if we offset that TNT with pistons, then we get rid of some of the horizontal velocity, and we end up with shots that look more like lines and not circles. Since pistons moving TNT get rid of all velocity in the opposite direction that they're getting pushed in. Once the TNT is back at this location, after being pushed by the orange circuit, then just like earlier, we push the TNT up. TNT falls from the sky, pushing it in a certain direction. Once we repeat the orange circuit pushing up and dispensing TNT process another few times, then we finish it off with the final step, which is getting this TNT to be launched out with the rest of the TNT. This process is basically identical to what we did right at the end of launching each layer earlier. Finally, after all that work, we get a projectile going anywhere in the world within 1,000 blocks to blow up as a cluster bomb. And the reason why I'm not calling it a nuke is because it's not big enough. There are certain limitations to this machine which make it very difficult to get a nuke out of it. Which, yeah, this explosion is big, but I wouldn't quite call this a nuke yet. Yet. Because I will make a nuke one day. One day, it'll be a way larger area than this. And I do have a plan on how I'm going to achieve that. Now to explain some weird design choices I made with this machine. You probably noticed that there's this blue circuit. And I never mentioned any blue circuit while making this. But it ends up going to the machine. There's a dispenser with TNT. So why did I put a blue circuit in here if I never used it? Well, that's because I was too lazy to remove it. So now it's just here. I was going to make a new design with this machine until I realized it had a limited range. So now it's stuck with that blue circuit because I don't feel like removing it. You might be noticing that there's a slab missing on this block. That's simply because there's no way I can get TNT to explode there because it's in unloaded chunks. So I'm limited to these 3 slabs. But then, how do I fire backwards if I'm limited to those 3 slabs? TNT blows up on top of both of those slabs, then they'll just cancel each other out. Well, that's because with these 2 pieces of TNT, I actually don't center them in the middle of the slab. Instead, I have them close to that sign and that other sign. And when this TNT is in the center and it gets blown up by those 2 pieces of TNT that are currently represented by items, then it'll get launched backwards, allowing for full 360 range. That is, if the full 360 range actually worked. I've tried and it works in some directions and it doesn't work in some directions. I don't know why, and I'm too lazy to fix it, so just deal with it. This machine took me long enough anyways, so I'm just glad I got at least one video out of it. Also, partway through, I realized that daylight sensors are a bit inconsistent on Bedrock Edition. Apparently, always day has to be turned off, and do daylight cycle also has to be turned off for daylight sensors to detect a change in day each tick. Do I know why? Absolutely not, but welcome to Bedrock Edition. It's a place where goofy stuff like this happens. So, this machine only works if you have do daylight cycle off, it's not night, and always day is disabled. So there's basically no way you're going to be using this in a survival setting. And if you're wondering why I use daylight sensors in the first place, it's so TNT could launch in any direction without being interrupted by any blocks or redstone. Inside the spreadsheet, I've selected the machine coordinates and the target coordinates. The machine coordinates are of the block above the glass block that is attached to the flying machine. And the target coordinates, this is the starting location of where you want to launch the TNT to. And bombs, this can be any number, preferably closer to like 4, maybe like 3 to 8. You don't want too high because then it'll take too long to launch. You don't want too small because then, well, you're not going to blow anything up. And then this end value, this just tells you from the location that the target is to these coordinates will get blown up. Once all this information is filled out, then it'll tell you what's all in the hopper and all the barrels. These paler colors represent stained glass panes. They don't need to be stained glass panes, they just need to be different from each other. In this case, you would do 1 glass, 1 orange concrete, 64 lime concrete, 1 purple concrete, 1 magenta concrete, and so on to fill up barrel number 1. And then this continues for all of them. And all the way down at the bottom, it tells you what order you need to place the barrels in and how many in a row of each barrel you need to do. So first, I need to place 1 of barrel number 1. This is barrel number 1. I'm going to place 1 of them down, followed by a hopper, because hopper is going between all barrels. Then, place 3 barrel 2s. 1, 2, 3. Then place 1 barrel 5. 1. And I think you get the pattern. And there you go. That is all the barrels you need to launch TNT at those coordinates. And that is everything you need to know to use this slight piece of garbage. Slim Tech is not responsible for any loss of friendships, diarrhea, vomiting, or death.